Welcome to the Far and Beyond podcast, hosted by the Contracts and Fiscal Law Department at the Judge Advocate General's Legal Center and School. I'm Major Ellie Sewell.
And I'm Major Jason Floyd. Today, we're going to continue our venture into the RFO's revised parts and take a look at the revisions to FAR Part 33, which covers protests, disputes, and appeals.
Your favorite part.
That is true.
Not my favorite part.
Oh, why not?
Don't like protests.
Oh, you don't like when people protest?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, they're just mad at me for doing my job.
Oh, that's true. Or not, in some cases.
Or not, but I'm always perfect. My contracts are never wrong.
Of course.
Like many of the other parts, the new FAR Part 33 was restructured chronologically, although it was already largely like that. The FAR Council has streamlined references to GAO's rules, removing some of the duplicative text.
Yeah, that's a good summary. And then one of the big changes that I wanted to talk about was the addition of the purpose of the bid protest system, now found in RFO FAR 33.100. It seems to try to dissuade would-be protesters from using the system for other than those designated purposes that are listed in that section. Interesting, though, because considering that the FAR generally can't bind contractors because it just regulates the government and its employees, so putting that language in there really just gives the KO something to rely upon or to cite to when dismissing a protest that he or she believes to be improper. I'm not sure that really adds anything legally, but it is there now.
Yeah, I think the hope is for deterrence. So we've put it in writing, so hopefully that stops a few people, makes them think twice. But what about the agency level protests? What are the big changes there?
Yeah, so I see we're going in order just like the new restructured FAR part. I appreciate that. So yeah, big changes there include FAR 33.104-4, which now requires the KO, get this, to release a redacted source selection decision document, or SSDD, if the protester in an agency-level protest elects an independent review or a review by an individual above the KO. Not only does the contractor get a copy of that redacted SSDD, but then they get to submit a supplemental statement to that reviewing official.
That is huge. Getting eyes on a redacted SSDD clearly allows a contractor to see if they actually have a case before spending tens of thousands of dollars on litigation at either GAO or COFC. But usually they still get an SSDD if they're above a certain threshold. So this is now just if they're below that threshold and they do an agency protest.
Yeah, it used to be a very high level dollar threshold. It was like $100 million or something. $100
million, right? For all contracts, and then over $10 million if they ask for it if they're non-traditional.
Yeah, so now this is bringing it to everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the big change. And also, not just that, they get to do essentially like a supplemental statement, which could be like a supplemental protest ground, maybe. There's not a lot of detail on what that supplemental statement could include.
I could see this too, them saying now that we know this, trying to file at GAO with another process. Is that opening the door for possible extending the timeline?
100%. Well, maybe not extending the timeline, but certainly giving them the ammo earlier on in the process, right? So the good news is, maybe we'll have fewer protests at GAO and COFC because they have this sort of beefier discovery that they can ask for and get earlier on in this agency level process. But the bad news is that once they get that SSDD, they might actually be more likely to go to GAO or COFC because they've already got that in hand and they have that solid ground upon which to state a protest claim.
What about the other procedures? Any changes?
For agency-level protests, one other thing is that the KOs are now required to report agency-level protests to the head of the contracting activity, or HCA, as soon as practicable after filing. Some of the language otherwise in there is cleaned up, so the changes aren't really likely intended to be substantive, but that one is a big substantive change. Mm-hmm. One other thing when it comes to non-substantive changes was they seem to remove who has to approve an override of that regulatory stay that we all know and love for agency level protests. So the revision took out the requirement that it be approved at a level above the KO. Now it just uses passive voice and says it must be either, urgent, compelling, or must be in the interest of the government. But it doesn't really say who has to do that. That doesn't say that agency level supplements won't fill in that blank. It's just that now the FAR doesn't say it has to be above the KO.
Okay, so that we could see more overrides possibly?
I think so, right? I think that when you reduce the approval level for who has to approve the override, it's more likely that the KO is going to be like, oh yeah, this should definitely be overridden.
And then sign off. Okay, we'll see.
Yeah. We'll see if it I don't want to say it's going to get abused, but it may be more likely for sure.
Any other changes to protests at GAO?
Yeah, not really. Like you mentioned earlier, most of the guidance was just removed. So the restatements of GAO's rules and procedures that were in the FAR that was sort of just a one-stop shop, so the KO didn't have to go look at the CFR. Those are all gone. So now it just says reference the CFR for GAO's rules.
What about the sections on claims and appeals?
Yeah, no substantive changes there either. It really just restructured it a bit. The most important part, as we all know, the text of the provisions and clauses, they remain the same. Yeah, so really for the part, it was just the changes to the SSDD and the override procedures.
All right, well, thank you, Jason, for walking us through those changes. Simple, but we'll see if they kind of change anything.
Yeah. I mean, the part didn't change that much just because most of it's statutory anyway, right? So, yeah.
It's GAO who controls most of that and COFSI.
Yep.
All right. Thank you for joining us today in this episode of Far and Beyond. Please make sure to follow us and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We love to hear from our listeners. Please continue to reach out to us on Facebook and LinkedIn. The information can be found in the show notes from today's episode. The views expressed today are those of the presenters, not that of the Judge Advocate General Corps, the Department of the Army, Department of the Air Force, or the Department of War.